The question is that the amendment be agreed to, and I call the honourable member for Fisher.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker, and I apologise in advance for my croaky voice. So I rise to speak on this bill, but I do so with a number of grave concerns. Now, I'm concerned for the 35,598 businesses on the Sunshine Coast. I'm concerned for the 178,000 locals who are employed by those businesses. We have nearly 14,000 labourers on the Sunshine Coast, many of whom are independent contractors, just like support workers in the community sector, like truckies and tradies across almost every industry in our local economy. I'm concerned that this government and this legislation will strip them of their ability to work for themselves, to build their businesses and to make their own decisions. Now, the government boasts, and listening to the last speaker, that this legislation we're discussing today comes after a great deal of consultation. Consultation. Now, whenever the government comes into this place and basically prevents the opposition from being able to review the legislation. So we were provided with a draft copy of this legislation yesterday, and now we're debating it today. Over 800 pages of legislation and explanatory memoranda. Now, for those Australians who are at home right now would be thinking, oh, 800 pages of legislation and explanatory memoranda, and the government wants us to debate this today. Now, that should cause everyday Australians a bit of a concern to start to think, well, why would the government do that? What have they got to hide? Why are they trying to rush something through with very little dealings with the opposition? Now, they talk about consultation. Small businesses across Australia weren't consulted. The independent contractors and subbies at worksites across the nation weren't consulted. The mum and dad business owners who are already struggling to keep their doors open, they weren't consulted. Young entrepreneurs whose businesses were growing thanks to our government, when we were in government, they weren't consulted. The private sector employers beyond the big end of town, they weren't consulted. The government talks about consultation and collaboration, yet it refuses to listen to those who are impacted the most. Now, who did they consult? They consulted with their union mates. What a surprise! The same unions who fund their campaigns, the same unions who determine who wins pre-selection. Well, that's very interesting. The same unions who pick and choose and distribute power whenever Labor takes the reins of government. That is the reality. Now, I want to remind those members opposite, trade unions do not represent the Australian people. The ACTU is not a representative body for Australians. The House of Representatives is the body that represents Australians. That's why it is unbelievably shameful that those members opposite, 800 pages of legislation and explanatory memoranda, and they provided us with a copy yesterday. And here we are debating it today. Everyday average Australians who are driving home from work should be thinking, what has the government got to hide? Now, the Labor government didn't even have the guts to put the legislation on the table for a meaningful exchange before bringing it to the House today. And not only that, for those businesses, those big businesses that they did speak with, they signed them up to confidentiality agreements. Those businesses couldn't share with the opposition or anybody else I mean, come on, what is this? What's this about? You're signing the people up to confidentiality agreements about legislation you're going to bring to the House. What is this? How does that work? Now, in three words, Mr Deputy Speaker, let me explain to the House why this bill is a dud. Complexity, cost and confusion. We'll call them the 3 Cs. Complexity, cost and confusion. See what I did there, member for Fremantle? Now, perhaps the Prime Minister hasn't read this legislation, because we know, he has this penchant for not wanting to read things in detail. We know that. Why would he? Why would he?
Order.
Why would he?
Order.
Now,
order. Member for Fisher, Chief Government Whip.
Understanding Order 76, I ask you to bring the member back to the substance of the bill.
The member is in order, and he is speaking to the bill, and the member for Fisher will continue.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. And it's amazing that the Chief Government Whip would try and even have the gall to raise relevance. You've had your chance of raising relevance.
Order. The Chief Government Whip. Order. Chief Government Whip has the call.
I'd ask the chair to ask the member to respect the chair's direction.
Order. The member for Fisher has the call, and the member for Fisher is relevant and will continue to be relevant.
Is relevant. Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker, because I am being relevant.
Order. Chief Government Whip is not helping. The member will be...
They don't like differences of opinion.
Order. The Shadow Minister. I have control. The member for Fisher will be heard in silence.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. This is demonstrative of the way that the Australian Labor Party work. When someone tries to raise issues in the way that the Australian Labor Party seek to conduct themselves, you raise spurious points of order. But look, I'll move on, Mr Deputy Speaker, because I don't want to run out of time. Now, perhaps the government doesn't have a choice, because we all know that they are beholden to the trade unions and they are obliged to implement the unions' demands, because we all know that they owe their pre-selections to the unions, of course. Now, this is a government who talked about well-being but slashed mental health care and essential services. And you know what was really interesting yesterday? That the manager or the leader of the House yesterday spoke about the pharmacists in here and talked about the importance of mental health care. Now, well, you've already had your go with relevance. Now, Mr Deputy Speaker, Mr Deputy Speaker, Mr Deputy Speaker.
The member for Fisher has the call. He'll be heard.
Those members opposite talk about the importance of respect in the workplace, and yet what do they see on building sites? Now, how many of those members opposite have actually worked on building sites? I asked that question. Now, there's only 3 of you in here, so it's probably... I would suggest there were very, very few. And if they think that building sites are this place of, pure snow, everybody behaves themselves, let me tell you, Mr Deputy Speaker, the CFMEU do not provide the same level of respect that those members opposite would talk about in this place. The hypocritical nature of those members opposite knows no bounds. Now, the reality is this is a callous and careless Labor government. This workplace relations reform is reckless, it's wrong and potentially disastrous. Though it is just another example of a Labor government who doesn't care. They talk about closing loopholes. Now, we've heard the minister talk about this bill and how it closes the loopholes in employment. It's a tricky slogan, but it's far from the truth. The bill won't close any loopholes. What it will do is widen the gap between the big end of town and hard-working Australians. What it will do is tear an enormous hole in Australia's economic productivity. It's nothing less than an attack on businesses and subcontractors. It'll cripple businesses. It'll crush subcontractors. It'll constrain business growth. It'll contract employment participation. These reckless reforms will send a shockwave through the economy, shatter business investor confidence and decimate Australian innovation and ingenuity. Labor's plan for workplace relations is to punish workplaces for their success and give unions a free ride into boardrooms and backroom decision-making tables. Because at the end of the day, this is all about providing unions with power. Now, we talked about costs earlier. Now, what is this bill going to do in relation to costs? Now, you would have thought that as a result of this government, where cost of living has gone sky high for all areas of Australians, rentals, mortgages, fuel, electricity, gas, food, everything has gone up. Everything has increased in costs. And now they want to introduce this bill, which, according to their own figures, is going to cost an additional $9 billion in wages over the next 10 years. Now, those members opposite may not understand this, but when you put an impost on businesses, that will flow through to the people who take those services, i.e. consumers. So not only are those members opposite driving up the cost of living for everyday Australians, we've now got additional costs that people are going to have to pay, additional costs that they cannot afford. Now, the legislation uses words like protecting and safeguarding, but whose interests are they protecting and safeguarding? Protecting bargained wages in the way that they have proposed will hurt labour hire workers, not benefit them. Those members opposite have a pathological hatred for labour hire. Why? Because they can't unionise the workforce. That's why. Now, dismantling the casual workforce, Labor's mighty goal, will drive up unemployment, it'll drive down investment and shut down businesses left, right and centre. And you know what else it'll do, Mr Deputy Speaker? It will drive down Australia's productivity. We already have plunging productivity rates in this country, and the government will make it worse through this bill. Removing subcontractors' independence only strips them of their ability to work for themselves, to balance their lifestyle, to set their own conditions and to grow as sole traders with the ebbs and flows of our dynamic economy. These are not workers trapped in the gig economy. That's essentially what the minister has done here. He's roped in hundreds of thousands of independent contractors under this wide umbrella of the gig economy. Subbies, casuals, entrepreneurs and business owners are not the gig economy or entrapped in an under-regulated sector. They are the heartbeat and the backbone of the Australian economy. They don't need the government to come in and save them. They want the government to get out of the way. This legislation will smother Australia's pioneer spirit and elevate the Fair Work Commission to the role of employer, not just regulator, for thousands of hard-working Australian subbies, casuals, labour hire workers and business owners. Removing decision-making powers for business owners and subcontractors is big government gone mad. And we all know that this government, every Labor government, is all about big government. This government, any Labor government, always and at every occasion believes that the bigger government, the better, because Australian workers, Australians in general, we don't know what's best for us. Government always knows what's best for us. It's the antithesis of Australia's reward for effort economy. It's uniformity at all costs, and it fails to appreciate the unique contours of our local, regional and national economies. Particularly in the building, tourism and social sectors, on which Australia depends right now. Now, Mr Deputy Speaker, this bill is a mechanism to disempower hard-working Australians, and we should fight it every step of the way.
Thank the honourable member for Fisher.